So, Narad, you were telling us about some of your dream experiences. Do you have some more to share?
Yes, this is with Basu, and it occurred on November 22nd, 1998. Because he was still here in his body, of course. He left 17 days before his 93rd birthday. And I was with him, and he asked me many things to do. He told me some things that were very interesting, in my sadhana. And he said, I had a number of problems years ago. And as I drew closer and closer to Mother, they fell away like veils from my shoulder. And he said, that will happen with you. And he also told me that once he wrote to Mother, and he said, Mother, in my talks, I feel now that Sri Aurobindo is talking through me. And he showed me that letter where Mother says, the closer you get to Sri Aurobindo, the more he will speak through you. And that's always my aspiration when I read Savitri. Let it be your voice, Lord. Let it be nothing of this. Just your voice. And I've had so many experiences with him, with Basu. So he comes to me before midnight, takes me to a house by the sea. He told me of many places in the world, mentioning cities by name, where one could have the experience of the sea. And becomes very interesting. He led me into a house. I remember a lady was walking or standing off to the right in a fairly large room with an enclosed veranda overlooking the ocean. It could have been Mother. I didn't see her face. He then took me down a short flight of stairs to another room. I somehow remember sitting on a ledge where I was at eye level with him as he stood before me. Then he had a ripe green grape between his fingers. He very softly touched my left eye. At this point I had my eyes closed with the grape, and then my right, and then the center between my eyes. At this point I must have opened my eyes, for I saw him very gently place the grape between my lips, after which I chewed and swallowed it. And the partial explanation that came to me, the ocean represents the possibility of the expansion of my consciousness. The grape, the divine ananda, which he was giving me by the grace of Sri Aurobindo and Mother. Did I tell you about being on the edge of the worlds with Mother?
No.
Oh, this was 1967. In the evening before sleep, I had set my entire being to meet Mother. And I had a question to ask her, but I couldn't divulge the question. And I remembered so little of the dream, but this one experience. I was standing with Mother on what seemed to be the edge of the worlds, and she moves her arm in a wide sweeping motion as one would express vastness. And Mother says to me, I have shown you the diversity in order that you may realize the unity. A dream experience with Narad Brar, September 24, 2010. Last night, my dear friend Narad Brar came to me many times in dream. I cannot recall clearly each time he came, but the experiences were so strong that I was awakened immediately and heard myself saying, "Ah, Niroda," so very happy to see him and remembering how he would joke with me when I went to meet him in his room to talk or share tea. He would say to others who gathered there, "I am Nirod and this is Narod." Bengali pronunciation. I recall his appreciation of my poem on Mary Helen, which was entitled "When Transformation Flowers Fell." He read it over and over, saying, "Very good, very good." We would also meet in Golconda when he was 100 years old. He would walk from his room in the ashram and suddenly appear in Temi's room to pay her and all of us a visit and join us in satsang. Oh, it was so wonderful. And then, Krishna Prem, young
Yeah.
Krishna Prem. Well, when Narad would leave, Krishna Prem and I would each take an arm and see that he got down the stairs safely, and he would walk back to his room. 100 years old. In this experience of that night, he was speaking to me and holding my hand. Though I can only remember the drift of the conversation, he was lying on a cot-like bed and was to be taken someplace. He asked me to accompany him and be on guard for him. In another sequence, I clearly remember, in the mind's eye, but even more so in the heart, Dolly, a small childlike body nestled against his chest, serene and protected. In life, I always saw Narad as a great and powerful, silent samurai, or a gentle leader of a nation.
He used to always call me Rajkumar, whenever I would meet him. Always I said, "But Nirda, why do you call me? I'm just a child of the mother." He said, "No, you are the mother's prince."
Oh, how beautiful. Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay, this one I've told you about. So this is July 29th, my birthday, 1973. I met with Madhav, bowed, touched his feet, and he pulled my head to his stomach and held me for a long time. Then he took me to his kitchen, gave me a bar of candy. I told him about my dream of all people in Oroville being actors in a play, and my leaning back relaxed to see all the characters, even those not close to me, playing an essential role. I asked him if people in Oroville were more representative of forces to be worked out, possibilities and difficulties. He confirmed this and said that as Oroville is a collective experiment, there is no place now for individuality. Each must fill his part. Later, individuality could come in. Most interesting. He then said that as we're both very enthusiastic about the lexicon, I wrote the Lexicon of an Infinite Mind, which is taken from a line in Savitri. He said it should be finished soon. He urged me to do it within a month, which took years, and he said, all new things are done this way, not slowly and over a long period of time, but it happened to be the opposite for me. As I was getting up to leave, he said, "This birthday will be a point of departure from the past." And then he again advised me to be more detached in the work. He said, "For our contribution in Oroville is what we accomplish in consciousness and not outward work." And This is February 7th, 2002, the day of Mary Helen's passing, and this is an experience I had. I have not been able to capture completely the feeling I experienced looking at Mary Helen at the moment of her passing. Something wondrous, yet hidden from my view, lingered at the edge of my consciousness. After 10 hours of watching her emptying the physical, the subdued, laborious breathing, the almost quiet, pain-filled gasps, the occasional deep moan, as if the pain of the world had settled in that frail form, there came the moment of her departure. All still, the room was absolutely still. Her eyes had been mere slits throughout the entire night, gradually closing as the end neared. Then, as her breathing steadied and slowed, she opened her eyes and looked at me. It was all love, all compassion, suffused with a quiet and all-encompassing tenderness. Then everything stilled and peace pervaded the room. Now, I don't know if I told you about her last words. Did I tell you?
Yeah.
I did, okay. So 14 hours later, I realized what the inner being was seeing. An impression of one of the new or transitional beings preceding the Superman. What I saw will never leave me. A sexless being, but in this instance, one with a feminine aspect. There was no hair, but the facial features were human. No eyebrows or eyelashes. Great, luminous eyes of a royal blue, not piercing, but of an extraordinary gentleness that saw, in a moment's glance, things as they are, not as they appear. The ears were average in size, but prominent since there was no hair. The mouth was most interesting, as it seemed to be an opening capable of manifold expression, not designed for the intake of food specifically, but a refined organ of communication to express higher experience in terms that mental man could understand. The skin was soft and smooth as that of a baby, and had not quite a translucence, but lucent as of polished alabaster. Her nose was small and perfectly formed, the neck somewhat long and elegant. It was a being of great peace and solicitude, behind which dwelt a formidable power. Its mission was one of helpfulness during the transition. I saw nothing below the neck, but the smoothness of the skin, and features seemed to extend downwards. One last recollection about the eyes. When this new being looked at you, there was not the overwhelming feeling of power and force, but an infinite compassion, much as one feels when looking at Sri Aurobindo's photo. 1965, when she was 21 years old and came to the ashram. This is a very strange experience. Pashi Kapoor had invited me, wanted me to go to Chennai with him during a conference of the Global Organization of People of Indian Origin.
When was this?
I didn't date it. It's not very, very long ago. It must have been in the early 80s.
Oh,
Maybe. Why he invited me, I'm not of Indian origin, well, I don't know. But this is incredible. When all the awards were being given out, and many speakers gave presentations that lasted nearly 3 hours before the dinner, I sat at a table about 50 feet from the large windows that opened on an enclosed garden. To my delight, I saw a pure white oleander in full bloom. I was filled with the flowers, and it was filled with flowers and truly touched my heart. But at that time, I could not quite remember Mother's significance. The significance of the pink and the red forms immediately came to me, but the meaning of this beautiful, glistening white flower eluded me. Pashi was sitting much closer to the window, probably only 20 feet away, and I kept pointing to him to look out the window. He thought I was pointing to the buffet table, which was up against some of the windows, but I shook my head no, and kept pointing to the oleander. I mean, it was incredible. Then he saw it, and he too was astounded at its beauty. The next morning the conference continued, but the room was partitioned off since there were far fewer people there. I went to the side of the room where we had dinner and looked at the window. No white oleander. I then asked the hotel staff if this was the banquet room where we were, and I was assured that it was. But to satisfy myself, I walked out in front of the building throughout the ground floor of the Trident Hotel, and suddenly the significance came to me. Quietness established in the mind, or quiet mind, both single white flowers. I then found Pashi and asked him to confirm where he had sat, and then to look through the window for the white oleander. He was astounded that it wasn't there. The area was well manicured with a nice lawn, and the oleander was in the ground when I saw it. We looked at all the other plants in the area, but the space where the white oleander had been was only undisturbed lawn. Interesting to have another person confirm an experience like that. So, and this is a most interesting time. I wrote this in 2008, but this was mid-1970s when we were really preparing for the building of the gardens.
right.
So Mary Helen and I visited botanical gardens around the world to collect these beautiful and unique plants for the gardens. And a close friend introduced us to a lady, Dorothy Fernando, who lived in Colombo, Sri Lanka. She was an artist, and she specialized in painting plumerias, my flower. So in a park in Colombo, we first discovered and collected seeds of the lovely pink form of Caesalpinia pulcherrima, brought them back to India. Okay, Mother named the yellow one, the orange one, no, the orange one she named Fire, you'll know that plant, and the yellow one she named Fire in the Mind. But the pink one was never here. Now it's all throughout India from that bag of seeds we brought. It was beautiful. Now, so one day she says to us, I would like to take you to a friend of mine who lives nearby. He has a unique collection of plumerias I haven't seen anywhere else, and she's painter of plumerias. With a smile, she asked us to follow her. We arrived at an estate which was very near her house and entered these magnificent grounds, which were landscaped with an abundance of flowering plants. Sitting near the pool was Arthur C. Clarke. This was his home. He warmly welcomed us and invited us to take as many cuttings of all the plumerias as we wanted, which we brought back to the Matrimandir. And then I wrote here are 3 laws that Arthur C. Clarke wrote in his far-reaching work, Looking into the Future. 1, when a distinguished but elderly scientist states that something is possible, he is almost certainly right. When he states that something is impossible, he is very probably wrong. Number 2, the only way of discovering the limits of the possible is to venture a little way past them into the impossible. And 3, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. He also wrote, before you become too entranced with gorgeous gadgets and mesmerizing video displays, let me remind you that information is not knowledge. Knowledge is not wisdom, and wisdom is not foresight. Each grows out of the other, and we need them all. Oroville, mid-1970s. The other day, a sister Orovillian shared with me this thought. When we go out of Oroville, we represent something of the mother's consciousness. And when we return, we represent the ordinary consciousness with all that must be transformed. The experience of being in the outside world for a period of time, as I presented programs on the work of the Matrimondian Gardens, I would go all over, spoke to the directors of the New York Botanical Garden, and they were all open to this. This is the great thing. At that time, everyone was open to it. And I had slides at that time which I would show, and pictures of Mother. I met people who were so interested. An ashramite who recently returned from Europe expressed her feelings to me in this way. I was so happy there. People were kind and generous, more friendly than I had ever known them to be. Yet, when I returned here, with all the difficulties we face, I felt here the soul is given a little push forward, something that is not evident there. Mm-hmm. This is in 2013, January 1st, the new year, and it's called Two Children Who Will Lead Us into the New World. I returned from the Om Choir in Savitri Bhavan, where about 100 people gathered for the first Om Choir of the new year. And somebody called me just before I slept. Perhaps it was the force and beauty and power and the presence of Mother at the Om Choir that led to this most memorable dream experience. Following my dream of the other night, I don't know where that one is. People see Mother all the time in the Om Choir. The other night, a man very elderly man from Baroda said she was standing right here. Because she told me I had to bring down the new music, so she has to be there to help us. Someone comes from X with a package for me and a note from him. I see that it is a white bag, nearly translucent, which contains within it 4 white cloths that are folded, enclosing something within them. X writes in his note that the package contains the things that are needed for the 2 children who will soon lead us into the new world. But the package contains only enough for one of the children. He then asked me to find the things for the other child. The entire night is spent in searching and finding these essential things that the second child will require. I find them all, and in the early morning, I awake with a quiet joy, and gratitude fills my being. So,
thank you.
Thank you, Maurice.